We interrupt this program to bring you the Design Hustle podcast, conversations around successful design journeys. Take it away, Ali.
Kent, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ali. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
I've been chasing you for a long time, and thank you so much. I think we had like a false start last time when we had this conversation, but I'm glad that you've managed to show up because it really means a lot to me. And I'm just gonna jump right into it, right? How would you introduce yourself to non-designers?
Ooh, that's a really great question. Well, yeah, I usually introduce myself as a designer. I've considered myself a creative person. I design products, hopefully products that people are familiar with and use in their everyday lives, and trying to make those products more useful and more intuitive and more meaningful for folks through my art and design and creative skills.
That's awesome. It's almost as if you've got your elevator pitch really sorted out. So, when you talk to people about products, do they understand that you're talking about digital products, or do they assume that you're talking about physical ones?
Yeah, so a lot of the times I'll mention that I work on digital products. With the caveat, though, later in my career, I started working with some industrial designers and working more on like some consumer-facing products. So like the Google Pixel Watch, for example. I also like to work on software that makes physical products work too. So I always like to think of how to, bridge the physical and digital divide, if you will. So yes, I do usually say work on software products, but a lot of people can relate to like the physical products, the wearables, the things that we see, driving down the road or flying in the sky, feels a little more relatable. So I think as I describe what I do, a lot of times those are like the anchors in which to start the conversation.
That's cool. Let's address the elephant in the room, right? The G word, the Google word. Does it really define your identity now as a designer?
That's a really great question. I think for some people like that could be a defining factor. For me, I don't think it is necessarily something that defines me. It's been an amazing honor to work at a place like Google. And for me, I just wanted to spend my time working on, products that can really help people or have a meaningful impact in people's lives. When you think of the scale in which Google operates, like the billions of users that they have for their various products, I felt like it presented a really nice opportunity to have impact for, a larger audience than I was otherwise designing for. But honestly, Ali, I don't think that really defines who I am as a designer. And there's a lot more to my career. There's a lot more to my interest than just that company, right? So thinking about some of the other things that I've done in my career, yes, it's part of who I am, but it's not my identity.
That's awesome. That's a great answer, Kent. Can you sort of take us down through your sort of journey and like non-professional? So it's like I love to ask people about their creative starts. Like, how did it start?
Yeah.
Were you a creative as a child? Were you more mechanical? So let's
yeah,
explore.
okay. Fun trip down memory lane here, Ali. Thank you for that question. Yeah, so when I was a kid, I was always interested in all sorts of different creative things. For example, architecture was something that I've been interested in since I've been in elementary school, really. And for a long time, I actually thought I wanted to be an architect. I still love a great building. Even to this day, I'll walk into this, amazing piece of architecture and just have that moment where I'm like, maybe I choose the wrong career. Maybe this is where my passions really, really lied. But I was always interested in Legos. I had about 60 Lego sets in my parents' basement, all set up, all different types. I like tinkering with Legos as a kid too. So that was a huge part of my childhood. And then I was always interested in drawing and painting. And that's something I did from little on up. So pen and ink drawings, watercolor drawings, of course, watercolor paintings. Obviously didn't have enough coffee yet today. But anyway, as I start to think about, my love for drawing and stuff, that really stemmed from childhood. So when I got to high school, let's say like 9th or 10th grade, I was a teenager. It was right at the beginning of the dot-com bubble. So in the late 90s, this was happening. And I started to realize like computers were also really interesting and a great tool for expressing creativity. So I started learning a bit more about just basic HTML, CSS, how to build websites. And at that time, I was playing a lot with Macromedia Director and Flash, not to date myself, but could really do some interesting animation work with some of those tools and realized I could express some of my creativity through digital mediums. And that's kind of really where I would say I got my start.
So were you familiar with like the dot-com scene at that time, or was it more computers?
Yeah, so I think it was all new at that point. So I grew up in rural Pennsylvania, in America. There wasn't a lot going on in the town that I had grown up in. So we had our first computer. It was like a family computer, a desktop, we got when I was in 8th grade, so around 1997, 1998. And for me, I just just like I liked playing with the Legos in the basement and building new things, I found that I could do the same with the computer. Now, I was pretty, I was still kind of young, right, when the dot-com bubble was happening. But it was really interesting seeing all these new startups pop up, really embracing what the internet had to offer. And I thought there was something interesting about that. And of course, when I was right about to graduate from high school, the bubble burst, and I saw, what happened there too. But I realized there was a lot of potential moving forward. So I wasn't at the time, to answer your question, I was just kind of like in this exploratory phase where it's just like trying different things out, building different experiences. I started working with website design. I used to run cross country. So I made a website for my team where we could track everybody's races and times and career bests and personal bests and stuff. And I realized it was kind of fun. And I didn't know much more beyond that at the time, but I was just kind of playing and building different experiences.
Cross
when that was all happening.
How did that happen?
Yeah, I just I don't know. That was just something I found myself doing. I ran track and cross country for 3 years in high school and 2 years in college, actually.
Wow.
And it was really fun. It was a great experience. I miss being in that kind of physical shape, just getting up in the morning and being able to just cruise for 6 miles or 10 miles and go out and just enjoy time outdoors. But yeah, that's a great question. I don't know how that happened. I just found myself doing it and I ended up liking it. I mean, I hated running when I was a little kid, but I think the runner's high is something I really enjoyed when I was a teenager that came with that.
Yeah. So are you still sort of trying to run now, every now and then, or?
Yeah, I wish. And unfortunately, I have a lot of arthritis in my knees and stuff from that point in my life. And I was in a skiing accident later in life that's preventing me from being able to really go back into like road running and outdoor running. So unfortunately, no, I have to do low impact workouts right now.
Okay, that's great. So you're bicycling, stationary bicycle and
Exactly.
elliptical and stuff here. So
exactly. But I will say this, thinking about how that kind of influenced some of the domain spaces I worked on in product design and UX. I did work on Fitbit for a while. And one of the things that attracted me to that type of work, like personal fitness and all, was that experience from earlier in life when I was a runner and really enjoyed that part of my life and all the hard work that went into that. And I was thinking about ways in which UX could help other runners and people training for, various sporting events to be able to do that more effectively with wearables and tech.
I wanted to make that connection myself because that's why I'm like, oh, that's a really interesting sort of connection that later in life you ended up working with Fitbit. We're going to come to that. Like, let's not skip the phases. Yeah.
Of course.
All right.
Of course. Little foreshadowing for later, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Stay tuned till I don't know, for another 15 minutes where we start talking about Fitbit. So So you were in Pennsylvania. You were in high school. Then what happened? Like, how did you become a designer? Did someone tell you about design, or?
This is a great question. So for the longest time, I still wanted to be an architect. And I was lucky enough that my school at the time offered me this independent study as part of my coursework with a local architect. And it was just kind of this amazing experience where I learned a little bit about design instead of, at the time I was making a lot of art. So this was a nice pivot into thinking about creating something that's people are going to use on a daily basis or live in, like a building or a home, right? And I loved my time in this independent study. But it was kind of funny because as creative as I was able to be, I learned a lot about building architectural models and blueprints and all this great stuff. But at the end, the architect who I was working with, he sat down and sat me down and said, okay, this was fun, but I also want to set expectations as to how this profession, would unfold if you were to pursue it. And he told me about, being AIA accredited in America, and also I think it's a fellowship or like I'm sorry, the word's escaping me right now, but you kind of have to go through a program akin to like a doctor going through a residency, right, to get your certifications and stuff like that. And he basically said, you're going to put a lot of time in, you're going to put a lot of late hours in, and, for the first like 10 to 15, maybe even 20 years of your career, you're not really going to do a lot of creative work. It's just kind of a lot of manual drawing and stuff like that. And it did turn me off a little bit about pursuing that direction, and I wondered if there were other career paths where I could be a bit more creative. Now, where I grew up, there wasn't a lot of awareness of what you could do with a design degree or an art degree. And I didn't really have a lot of guidance in kind of like how to channel the creativity. Like, okay, I like computers, I like drawing, I like painting, I like architecture. So where I grew up naturally, go to design school, learn how to be a graphic designer. So at the time, that's what I did. And I was lucky enough, both of my parents were high school teachers. And my dad, we were looking at different programs in the area, and he was contacting department heads at the different schools that I was looking at the time. And I was torn between computer science and graphic design at that point. And when I started to look more into graphic design, I realized it was something that was really interesting to me, and I could be very creative, and I thought it was a good profession. So I actually ended up pursuing that after talking to a few professors at some of the schools that I was looking at the time. It seemed like a really great path. So that's the direction I headed towards, full steam ahead that time.
That's awesome. About architecture, of course, it's quite funny when I transitioned into UX design from architecture. My mindset was still very architectural in that respect, right? So, and we would never call ourselves senior architects, right? So,
Yeah.
after 40, so it's like the life of an architect starts after 40. So it's like you need to do the R's, you need to do the drills, and and then I entered into this landscape where 3 years of experience was a senior, right? And a senior developer is like, oh, I just graduated 2 years ago. And suddenly the senior designer, and so I think the whole industry was completely shaped differently. The expectations were different.
Oh, yeah.
So I can imagine why he sort of set the expectations right for you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was really grateful for that conversation. I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say I was, still curious, like what would have happened if I had taken that path. But I am grateful for a lot of the opportunities I had and the ability to like really be creative at a much younger age as an adult.
I can almost promise you, Kent, you would have done really well as an architect as well. So it's just yeah, absolutely. It's the person that you are, and yeah, it's your path, whatever path that you were given, you just ran with it, right? So yeah.
That's really kind, Ali. I do have to say, I think we both joined UX at an interesting time because you had this great melting pot of people coming from different backgrounds. So I came more from the traditional visual design background, and you came in from architecture. I'm curious, like, how did you find your way into UX from architecture?
That's an amazing question. So I call myself an accidental UX designer. So UX was a means to an end for me because I started a startup, and so I had enough money to get these developers, remote developers. But for to explain the concept, to create the diagrams, to create these journeys, to create everything, I was using my architectural sort of presentation skills, like, Photoshop, whatever I could put together. I would use that, and then I started doing interfaces, but I didn't know I was doing UX or UI initially.
Yeah.
And then I started talking to people, and I was doing experiments, and I was iterating things on the fly. And then one day, the startups didn't work at that time, right? And there was ups and downs, and then I started applying for jobs. I'm like, I need money because we need to sustain the whole thing, right? So, and then someone who was a recruiter, a screener, I would say, he looked at my stuff and he said, "Oh, Mr. Khan, it seems to me like you are a UX designer." I'm like, "Oh, UX designer, let me write this down." So, and I Googled it after the thing. It was a 7-minute call. It changed my life completely, right? So, and then I leaned into it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get into this and understand what UX is. So that's my story.
That's awesome. That's a great story. Yeah, I always like, when we're talking about our backgrounds and stuff like that, it's always really fun to just kind of exchange just the backstory of how we all found ourselves here, right? So that's really cool. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you for asking. I've almost never met anyone who started off as a UX designer who has more than, let's say, 10 years of experience, right? So after, I would say, 2012, 2013, it started becoming like a thing, officially, I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to your story. So so by this time you had finished your graphic design bachelor's.
Yep, I did. I went to a state school. I went to a state school in Pennsylvania. Had a wonderful time, and it really kind of opened my eyes as to what you could do with a design career. Now, again, in the wake of the .com crash or bubble bursting, I feel like if you were in any sort of digital design field, you could find yourself working on product design. You could find yourself, working in service design, like all these really cool UX challenges. You might be working on marketing and advertising. It just felt like there were so many opportunities, right? And there weren't necessarily labels assigned to them, like, oh, well, you're doing product design or you're currently working on like a UX, project. It just was a design project, and it was like an interactive design project. And I concentrated in advertising and interaction design as when I was in college. And when I graduated, I found myself working at a very small agency. It had 6 people to a dozen people. Like the size of the company kind of fluctuated, again, in rural Pennsylvania. But we were working for, at the time, doing some campaigns for some larger companies like HGTV and Food Network and Yahoo. And at the time, which was still all the rage, very popular search engine. Dating myself here, I realize. But we also worked for a consumer electronics company, and I found myself actually working on projects with their product teams. And at the time, we were thinking about ways to use the iPhone, which was very new. This was back in 2007. Just after that, the App Store was introduced, and we were thinking about how we could use an iPhone to control lights in your home, your shades, in your office space. And when I started working on those types of design challenges, I realized I was actually falling into UX type work at the time, product design work. And I loved it because if I go back to what I love so much about architecture, I felt like it was the same type of thinking, just applied to a different domain and different subject matter. And I started to realize, okay, this is where I feel at home, because I never felt like I was a great visual designer. And I still feel that way about myself. And advertising wasn't necessarily for me. I liked coming up with different concepts and thinking about the design strategy around it. But at the same time, I got a lot more satisfaction, I realized, working on products. And that's when I kind of realized, okay, I can still practice design and solve problems that I felt were like, I could do things similar to what I liked about architecture, but in this really exciting space, which was emerging with the UX at the time. So I realized about 5 years in, this is what I want to do. I'm going to take a career turn, and I'm going to try to move in this direction. And that's what I did.
Oh, so this was a conscious decision from your side. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So at the time, I had a colleague that had moved to Philadelphia, worked for this really great UX agency, and we stayed in touch when he was there. And I remember him saying, "Hey, like, this design process is excellent. Like, we're solving all these really cool challenges with design. We're working on service design, and we're helping big companies with their enterprise products and applications." And I thought, okay, I can really, maybe I should make a move, figure out how to do this full time and learn more about it. So I was lucky enough that the company that I worked for in Philadelphia was called Electronic Ink at the time. And it's actually now part of Frog Studio. But at the time, Electronic Ink was they probably had about 75 people or so. So medium-sized design studio. But they had this great reputation in the city for UX excellence and product design. And they also specialized in data visualization and infographics. So I thought, what better place to go to learn about this? And luckily, the CEO of the company was a designer, and I felt like he really got it. In that, the way the company was structured, you had visual designers working on interaction design. He just looked at it as design at the end of the day. So what got me into it is the visual design background I had was appealing to this company because I could still use those skills that I had been developing over the years. But then while I was there, I figured that I could learn a lot about interaction design and UX from a lot of just great colleagues and talented people that were there. And I was lucky enough to get a job offered to me, and that's what I ended up doing.
That's awesome. That's like it's almost like, so I've spoken to people, and they sort of talk about this, this wizard who comes in, like, who guides the other person. It's almost like a mentor, right? The hero's
Yeah.
journey, where like, you get this call to action from this sage who comes in and says like, okay, you know what? There is this thing called UX. Would you like
Yep.
to take this
Yeah.
journey? And for you, I think to be able to join a company that was specializing, I think that's awesome. That's a great start.
Yeah, it really was. And the company actually had its own UX research team. So they had, the team with folks with psychology backgrounds, behavioral scientists, folks coming from anthropology that really had this wonderful academic approach to UX research. We even had like our own eye tracking lab and UX research lab right in the office. Designers could be designers and really kind of like learn from the UX requirements coming from the research team. But then we also worked very hard to blur the lines between design and research. So for me, I loved when researchers were sketching with me, ideating with me, and drawing with me. And it became more of this wonderful partnership. And a lot of times we ended up co-designing a lot of the solutions we came up with for our customers. But while I was learning this process, and I realized I actually loved the process more than actually like making design work. That's when I realized, okay, I feel like I'm at home. We even had some folks on staff that were architects. So I was like, I felt like I made it. I felt like a misfit before that. And finally, I got into this groove of working at this place where it was just surrounded by like-minded people that were just really helping me build my UX toolkit. And I was really grateful for that.
Wow. And then what happened after? So you left?
Yeah. So the interesting thing, when I was interviewing for that job, I was looking to work at larger companies. And I was interviewing at a few very large advertising firms at the time. I will say I had an interstitial job there. I went from the small ad agency in rural Pennsylvania to a really large advertising agency. And then I made the jump over to Electronic Ink to UX. And in that transition, started to realize at least, different design teams, different companies subscribe to different belief systems. And what I mean by that is you had some companies that organizationally were structured in a very siloed way. So when I was interviewing, I could share some experience around prototyping and UX engineering. I could share experience around visual design, and I could share experience around just doing like straight up interaction design at the time. And I'd have recruiters, ask me like, hey, like, well, what do you want to do? If you want to show like all this, one recruiter said, well, all this work is mediocre. So if you want to work in interaction design, just show me interaction design. If you want to work in visual design, just show me visual design and do it well. And if you want to work as a UX engineer or a developer, show me your technical portfolio. And I felt really defeated. And this is where I felt like a misfit, because I felt like all these skills could kind of work together and you could leverage them in different ways to solve different design problems. And it wasn't until I landed at Electronic Ink that I realized like, okay, there's other people out there that feel the same way about this as me. And when I was at EI, like I just had the freedom to like use whatever tools I needed to tell the right story and to help develop the right solution for our customer and their users and the people using their products. So that meant like if I wanted to code up a prototype, I could, and no one was going to tell me I couldn't because I wasn't on a development team. And if I wanted to do something a bit more visual, I could and really push the visual design skills in a way that was compelling to customers. And I loved having that freedom to just kind of choose from, different aspects of my background and combine different skills and work with other people on the team and leverage their strengths to really deliver something great. And it was, like I said, the first time I really felt like I could do that. So I moved on from there because I felt like I learned a lot. It was like this whirlwind of 3 years of this wonderful experience. And I moved on because I felt like working at a consultancy, I was helping to make a lot of rich people richer. And I hit this pivotal moment where I felt, okay, I want to be a bit more mission driven with my approach to design. And at the time, my mission was, how might I apply my skills in a way that's more meaningful to people and maybe can benefit a larger audience of people. So that's when I started kind of like looking beyond that to think about how can I take all this great stuff I've learned here and maybe applying it in a more thoughtful way. So I started to set my sights on Google because back in 2013, 2014 timeframe, Google had billions of users. I felt like the mission of organizing the world's information and making it universally accessible was really compelling. And I felt like there were different pockets of Google that I could potentially work in to really kind of deliver on that mission that I set out for myself. So interviewing there was interesting. It actually took me 3 tries to get into the company. So
Really?
Yeah. So the first time, I was still kind of learning about the UX process. So I didn't really make it much past the phone screen. And then I realized I had a lot to learn. So I took some time and again, developed these skills at Electronic Ink. The second time around, I made it, they have like a design exercise that you work on. This was back then at least. And it was a really fun exercise. And I wanted to show that like I was a detailed thinker and I could ideate. I wanted to demonstrate like all aspects of the UX process. And I think the solution that I submitted was just a bit too detailed at the time. And the people didn't have the time to read through the 90-page PDF that I sent that had like, every technical specification articulated, right? And then the third time, I actually made it through the process. And, I was much wiser based on the experience that I had the first 2 times and the experience I gained in between not working there and not making it through, but also continuing Electronic Ink and working on other gigs too. And I will also say, I think of my time at Electronic Ink very fondly because it was almost like a renaissance in my own career where, again, being surrounded by just these amazing people, I tried different things out. So that's where I started to gain the confidence to try writing blog articles because we were encouraged to do that. And I realized like I didn't have to be an expert writer to do that. We had a wonderful content strategy team and UX writing team there that mentored me through that process, gave me the confidence to start establishing a voice in the industry. And then there was also a wonderful group of people that were just into being adjunct instructors at the local universities. And I had an opportunity to do that myself. And again, like just leaning on colleagues, they kind of gave me the courage to do that. And I tried it and I thought, okay, I'm either going to fail fast or this might be something interesting. And it ended up being really fun. So I got to try all these different things out there that I probably wouldn't normally have tried out elsewhere. That also gave me a more diverse set of experience that I could then take to Google and get through their interview process with.
That's awesome. Like having the oversight of maybe understanding that you can ride on the shoulders of other people, right? And the idea that if the people around you who can actually inspire you, it's I think it's a blessing to be in that situation.
It is.
And to understand that you can actually draw something out of it. That takes a special level of awareness, I would say.
Yeah, so it was a great experience, but like you said, why did I move on? I became a bit more mission driven in my approach, and that was really a game changer to me. And I would say 12 years later, I'm still serving that same mission, and it's a really great just guiding principle for my career.
That's awesome. Like, okay, so now I'm going to ask you two questions. So, question number one, you are an author of a book as well.
Yes. Yes.
How did that happen? And explain that, please. I have just a little background, right? So, because I love diagrams because I'm an architect. I love to explain things in the easiest way possible. Right? I like to simplify things, right? And
Yeah.
diagrams are the best way to go about it. And you have a book on diagrams.
I do. Yeah. And feel free to, this is a little bit of a long story, so feel free to interrupt me along the way. We can just kind of have a conversation about it. So yeah, I would say in like the 15 time frame, like right when I joined Google, I actually wrote a blog article about Frank Lloyd Wright and, lessons that I learned from his philosophies around architecture and how we might apply them to interaction design. And prior to that, I was just kind of writing for the Electronic Ink Company blog, and I wanted to do something a bit more. So I pitched the article to Smashing Magazine, and this is when I was first introduced to the editorial process. And I went through 3 pretty hefty revisions. I had to do a lot of research for that specific article. It took 6 months to actually get it together, get it peer reviewed and approved. Their content review is very stringent. So it was a really great exercise in just kind of learning about the editorial process. And I never really viewed myself as a writer. In fact, I have a reading disability. So for me, it's something that just seemed unattainable to me. And that was like a pivotal moment in my career when this article was published. And I found it very, satisfying and rewarding. At the time, I was also out on the conference circuit too. I gave a talk on the same topic. And I was also giving some talks on data visualization, some of the infographic work that we were doing at the time at Electronic Ink. And I also enjoyed that as well. Like the storytelling aspect, the presentation aspect was really fun of that work. And then I took a break because when I joined Google, there was a lot to learn there, and new company. It was just a really interesting culture. I wanted to establish myself, and that took 120% dedication. So I had to put all that aside. But as I started working at Google, I eventually joined a data visualization team, and my manager at the time, who was just a wonderful mentor, it's very well known in a lot of data visualization circles, who wrote several books. One day he pulled me aside. We used to do a lot of design sprints, and if you ever read like the sprint book by Jake Knapp, you'll see a lot of like the design thinking process that Google uses, and that's a core part of our process. It's something that was really important to me. And of course, drawing is something that's a core part of how we exchange ideas, whether we're in a design sprint, a design workshop, or some sort of co-design session with our colleagues or our customers. And my manager pulled me aside one day because he had been in a lot of these sessions with me. And he said, Kent, a lot of people are asking me like how you draw and articulate your ideas and tell stories about them like so effectively. And he's like, I think, maybe it's worth writing a book on that. Like you should really consider it because it's more information than what you'd probably feature in a blog article or a published article somewhere, or a white paper. And at that time, my wife was pregnant with our son, my second kid. I knew I was going to be going on a paternity leave at some point, and I started thinking more seriously about it. So he helped me put a pitch together, and it was about a 5-year process to get the book through to publishing, but this is what sparked the initial idea. And it was really on drawing, which is something that goes all the way back to my childhood. So I felt like if I were going to try a first book on any topic, that was the one to do because it was something I've been doing my whole life. And I've learned a lot of really key lessons from a lot of different people along the way. And I had this amazing mentor at Google who kind of helped me through the editorial process. And yeah, it gave me the courage to do it. And at the same time, I was starting to publish blog articles, again, on Smashing Magazine. We were working on some data viz challenges around making data accessible to people with disabilities. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of research out there. There weren't a lot of guidelines out there. It wasn't a topic people were necessarily talking about 4 or 5 years ago. So I felt like we had information worth sharing. So it helped me develop that muscle of working with a publishing platform again and getting into that process. And one thing led to another. And yeah, the book came to fruition. It was a 5-year project.
That's awesome. And is this book still in public as an publication, or is it like I
Yeah.
think I lost? Sorry, I lost the screen. One second. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. You're back. Yeah, is it still
Okay.
in publication, Kent?
It is, yes. So the book was launched in fall of 2022. It's called Drawing Product Ideas, Fast and Easy UX Drawing for anyone. It's published by Wiley, and yes, you can order it on Amazon internationally too.
Well, that's awesome. Great. And are you thinking of revising the book? Because that's the next thing people do is technically, after a few years, you go for a second revision, maybe, because to probably give it a second wind, just take it out from this nap right now that it's taking, because it's been a few years.
Yeah, you know what, Ali? That's a great question. So I have thought about that, and I probably would. I'm actually kicking around the idea of writing a second book on data visualization. I'm working with a publisher on a pitch right now. I can't get too much into the details on that, but a lot of it focuses on some of the work that I've been doing over the past 3 or 4 years. And I think there's a really interesting opportunity to share some information about that. So it's still a bit of a nugget of an idea in my head right now, but I am actively pursuing that. So maybe if this works out, maybe after that might rekindle enough interest in the old book, Drawing Product Ideas, my first book, to do a second edition, hopefully.
That's awesome. I think data visualization is a really interesting one, the topic, because to tell stories through data, I think it's one of the most difficult things to do it well. As in, everyone does it, but to do it well is actually very difficult. Can you sort of maybe take us through that journey of working on material designs, data visualization, and then suddenly Google acquiring Fitbit, and now a whole team sort of comes and joins you. So what was
Sure.
that like? So the whole experience.
Okay. Yeah, let's chat about that. So this is also kind of a little bit of a long story, so feel free to jump in on the conversation here. So when I joined Google, I knew it was going to be a different experience moving from an agency to in-house at a company of that caliber. And the offer that I had back in 2015 was to join a team working on internal products and apps. And I felt like, okay, that feels like a natural transition from the consulting world working on enterprise products. There's going to be a lot of newness in this new world I'm about to head into. So if I need something familiar to hold on to, so it's going to be the work, at least temporarily. So I joined a team working on internal apps. I actually learned a bit about like management and design leadership. I was actually able to build a team on the product suite that I was working on at the time, which was really uncomfortable for me because I was at this interesting point in my career where I was in my early 30s. I wasn't ready to be a design manager because I still found a lot of joy in doing individual contribution work. And we can chat about this later, but I still do to this day and kind of need that to have the energy to do other aspects of the job. But anyway, this was really happening back then. And at one point I saw a colleague that I really respected in the hallway. And, I'd asked him, I knew he was a manager, and he had told me he went back to being an IC, and you have a path to leadership as an individual contributor at Google. So this really inspired me. And I started looking for different opportunities across the company. And there was one on a team that worked in Google Cloud. They were working on DevOps and cloud monitoring at the time. That was aspiring to be a dedicated data visualization team. And I thought about my experience at Electronic Ink. All my favorite projects involve some sort of like infographic challenge or visualization. And I started to realize like that was something that came easier to me than maybe some other aspects of UX in the profession. So this opportunity opened up, and my manager was going to be this designer Manuel Lima, who wrote, if you're familiar with him, he wrote Visual Complexity, the Book of Circles, the Book of Trees. He just knows so much about like the history of visualizations, and just a wonderful human being, and just an amazingly creative person. So I thought to myself, like, what better, way to get into data viz at Google than to have like Manuel Lima as my manager and mentor. I could really learn a lot here, and it's going to be fantastic. And it was. He did not disappoint. So very early on, Manuel had a relationship with the Google material design team. And we didn't have a lot of guidance around charts, graphs, and visualizations on the design system at that point. And that was both internally and externally. And we started out working on internal guidelines, and we had partnered with many different teams across the company. So we're talking like Google Analytics and folks in YouTube and search, and of course cloud, because there are a lot of data viz challenges and work happening there. We looked at enterprise visualizations. We looked at consumer visualizations. And the way he had set up the program was we were to be a team of experts within Google Cloud. And of course, we'd work on all those products. But then we ran an office hours program. And no matter where you were in the company, you could come to our office hours and we could review your work. We could brainstorm. We could talk about data viz challenges that were relevant to your team and kind of mentor you through that. We even offered a workshop where you could come in, and for a day we would just jam on a design challenge. And we worked with workspaces, and we worked, at the time it was Google Fit, and we just had all these awesome contributions. And with that experience, we were able to pull together enough knowledge and understand the needs of the different teams and their customers across the company to be able to put together a spec. So when it came time to do that, we ran a series of design workshops, because the material team asked us, sure, you can put together basic data viz guidelines and best practices, but doesn't everybody have that? We want to know what does data viz mean to Google and our products? And that was a really hard question to answer. So yes, we had a lot of code design sessions, which was really fun. My colleagues and I set those up with some help from Manuel. And once we ran through enough sessions that we were able to answer that question, we put together a working group that actually wrote the guidelines. So a colleague and myself took all the research we gathered across the company, and then we wrote the material data viz guidelines back in I think it was 2019 they were published. This would be Google Material 2, and then the Material 2 guidelines that were put out publicly that summer. So yeah, I didn't actually work on the material design team, but it was an open contribution based on our expertise and our partnerships that we had developed across the company that enabled us to do that.
It makes sense, because someone had to bring all those teams together, like working in isolation on different challenges and doing different types of visualizations to tell different stories. Because I've worked for some interesting data visualization. I would say projects, enterprise level projects. They're mostly to do with showcasing environmental data, and so scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. So it's basically these enterprise level supply chain management carbon measuring platforms. So it's carbon accounting for large corporations, right? So and the problem was, one of the biggest challenges, there's a need to show data from one side. Of course, the data has a need to be shown. So that's a requirement of a data that needs to be visualized. But on the other end, the visualization needs to be understood. So I always saw it as a dual challenge, where we need to look at humans and then at the data at the same time. So the data has needs as well. So
exactly,
it was quite unique for me to understand that. So were you when you were going through this, did you sort of think that now you've done enough, like you've maybe covered all the use cases, your job is done, moving forward, moving on? So did you ever feel that, or you still feel that there's a lot of work to be done?
I don't think it's ever done. And as the tech landscape evolves, especially in this age of AI, there's so much potential, especially in my opinion, for data visualization and AI. And I kind of started learning about this just by finding myself in different projects over the course of time. So with this program that we had built, at one point Manuel had left the company, and then I was kind of left to drive the program, and that was also an interesting moment, because I felt like I had big shoes to fill. Manuel was just amazing, and we had some attrition on the team after that. So I was kind of like in a position through succession to drive the program forward, and I ended up doing that, and I learned a lot about. Manuel was a really great mentor in helping me understand what it means to be a leader. Even if I was doing individual contribution work, I really learned a lot about leadership and being an influencer in a large company, and developing those skills to be able to do that, all while continuing to build on my data viz expertise. And it's just something I love, to the point now where like those are my favorite projects. And I was able to learn from my colleagues enough that now I realized, through office hours and stuff, I could help a lot of other teams just by some of the knowledge that I gathered, passing that on to other teams. So I get to this point probably about 4 or 5 years in, where I get to do all these really cool like consulting projects, or pulled into different meetings where I probably have no business working on this subject matter or domain, but because there's a lot of data viz related questions, and with the knowledge I was able to gain from colleagues and through learning in the past 8 years working in this area, this focus, I can now deliver value to other teams who are working on some really, really cool stuff that I probably otherwise wouldn't have been able to work on.
I think you've developed this amazing expertise in a niche here, which is going to be so useful as you said, like in the age of AI. Now we need to take care of the data coming in from that side as well, because AI being having requirements as well from the perspective of the system, and part of the system, and then humans being part of the other side, and understanding how both of these things work together. So one last question that I have, because I'd love to get into data visualization completely, like for like an hour, because it's so cool. I think I've got so many questions, which I love visualization, especially data, because storytelling through this is absolutely amazing. But the question that I have for you is a bit of it's a typical question. I'm sure everyone asks you this, because
Sure.
I think everyone wants to know this. So what does it take a person like me, a normal designer who's been working for a few years, let's say maybe a few years of experience, so I would say like 4 years of experience, who wants to join Google? What advice do you have for those designers? What should they do?
Yeah, I mean, I think okay, there's a couple things, right? So there's the basic learning, the fundamentals of just kind of like the design and the discipline, I think is really important. Aside from that, there's a couple other things. So like, I would always tell people starting out to like try different things. So like, I think when I look at my own family, right, I jumped jobs maybe 3 or 4 times very early in my career, because I wanted to try, an agency. I wanted to try a small one, a large one. I wanted to switch and pivot into UX. And I think that experience of trying different things really helped me find my groove and my niche and what I really love to do. If I didn't have that experience, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. So that was kind of like one, right? Like just try different things and see what fits. I also loved working at an agency because I could explore different domains. Every, 6 to 9 months, you had a new project, and the one might be fintech. The next could be in healthcare. And that was really interesting because I was exposed to different subject matter. And again, through that, I could kind of find something that I like. So the third, I would say, is kind of being true to yourself. Like, designers, there's tons of designers out there. And, with some of the different programs or avenues you can take to get into UX and design, it's pretty easy to become a designer. So I think it's important for people to think, like, as an individual, like, what matters to you? What can you bring to the table that other designers aren't going to be able to bring to the table? For me, it was kind of like really thinking about data visualization, the creativity behind that, the systems thinking, those skills that like I've developed over the years that have come easy to me. Those are my strengths, and I want to make sure that comes through in my story. And then also having some sort of passion, especially for like design exploration. Try different ideas, fail fast. Tell us why those ideas failed fast. It's okay. I think those are all ingredients to what makes a good a good candidate, not just for Google, but for any any high profile design team. So think about what matters to you. And for me, being a mission driven designer really kind of helped me organize my thoughts and help guide my career path and like what I'd want to do next. And even as I start thinking now about like, okay, what does my design career look like when I'm 50 or even into my 60s? That's still that guiding principle. It's going to guide me, whether it's at Google or maybe at a different company. It's still about delivering on that core mission. But I think it takes experience to kind of, at least for me, it took experience to get that sorted out. And I think it's a good exercise for everybody to go through.
That's wonderful. The hardest thing to do for a designer is to find, or anyone is to find the purpose, and I think that guiding principle, the North Star, and it's, for me, like, it's always been a challenge, right? So because at different phases in life, so there's this outline that I am sort of following, which is like, add impact. For me, impact driven projects are very important. And I'm constantly trying to find my place in the universe, right? As everyone else, through my tools. So my way of communicating with the world is through design. Sometimes it's architecture, sometimes it's UX, sometimes it's something else, sometimes it's a podcast. So it's this idea that the medium is the message, right? And it becomes really, really exciting. I think for designers, if they start earlier, I would say, because maybe I started too late to find the purpose. I feel like when you have as you said, like, I think what I learned from your story was when you had that pivotal moment in your career where you decided for UX was like a very important part because it sort of changed the direction of your life, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I would also say too, like, even though that's a guiding principle, the path to that is not a linear path. And like, sometimes you might have to do something just to kind of support your family or keep, stay afloat, so to speak. But even if you're on that path, not every project is going to be glamorous. It's not going to be a high impact project. And for me, it was around looking at each project as an opportunity to see if there's anything I could take away from that I could apply elsewhere that helps me deliver on that mission, right? So like, I remember like in the electronic ink days, I had a few very challenging projects that I was working on, and some actually just at some points I felt like I was bored. But then I looked to teaching as a way of helping me develop skills and finding energy in the students in design school to keep moving. And for me now, it's if I can have at least one day a week where I can be creative, I can draw, I can work on something that gives me the energy to do some of the other aspects of my job that might be less interesting to me. And again, as like another guiding principle to fulfilling that mission, creativity, I think is worth investing in. And even if it feels like I'm not in a position to be very creative, finding alternatives that allow me to be creative so I can continue having the energy to, finding opportunities to deliver on that mission later in life.
That's an excellent point to end on, Kent. Thank you so much for having this.
Awesome. Ali, thank you for having me. If you ever want to talk about data viz, that is a topic I love and would love to chat about that. I've been thinking a lot about AI and how visualizations can keep humans in the loop in autonomous systems, and also using visualizations in LLM experiences. So lots to unpack there. If you ever want to have a follow-up, it'd be really fun to chat about that.
Absolutely. I would love to get some time from you again and really deep dive into it, because I have a lot of questions for you.
Oh, fun. Yeah, it's a topic I love. So I could talk about data viz for hours and have conversations. Also learn from folks like you as well, too.
That's awesome. Thank you, Kent.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks for having me. This was an honor. Really appreciate it.